Welcome back, everybody. Our next presentation is a panel from our First in the World grant, STEAM. Our principal investigator, Chantal Lovett-Bristol. Our project manager, Jenny Moss. Our lead researcher, Emily Bonham, and our graduate researcher, Vivi Wang. They're here to share what we have learned in the process of taking on a project like STEAM involving 25 courses here at Purdue.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks for coming back after our break. We are, again, extremely thrilled that you're here to share with us some ideas and thoughts about transformative education. As Chantal will explain later, we're all building this up, so I'm sure your keynote will be fantastic. No pressure. But you'll learn more about our impact program. And let me give you a little bit of background about STEAM. And we are a first in the world grant-funded project. They were 2 years of cohorts that earned first in the world grants, and only over 500 people applied each cohort, and it was about, what, 14 or so, 14 and maybe 16 were awarded the second year. So we feel very excited, very proud of that, and we'll introduce you to some other first in the world grant winners throughout the day. And we want to talk a little bit about what we've learned going through this process. And I think when we'll open the floor for some questions, and we'll invite our other first in the world grantees that are here to share a little bit about their process. One of the things as project manager that I like to do is delegate. So I'm going to ask if anyone else would like to go first and talk about what they learned.
Oh, you're delegating the starting position. I was going along with the pictures in the booklet. Anyway, if you are here and you received a First in the World grant, can you raise your hand, please? California back there. There you go. Ira is going to speak later.
College of New Rochelle.
College of New Rochelle. Great, wonderful. So we kind of came up with the idea of doing this toward the end. So we're in our 5th year no-cost extension. And we met for the first few times in Washington, D.C. We were talking about that last night. And those were very helpful in terms of talking about what we were doing and the transformations and what we were learning. And then it stopped, right? We didn't go back to Washington for those meetings, and we really missed it. So this was kind of our way to have that happen. So I'll spend about just maybe 3 or 4 minutes talking to you about my experience as PI. That was my first large grant. I had others that I had received, but that was the first big one that I wrote, and kind of how I approached it. So I was really interested at that time with the work that we were doing in the center and all of these conversations about active learning. And all of the work that I was reading about, George had a wonderful presentation about the HIPS and work of Pat Hutchings, who's going to speak as well. And really trying to understand, why is active learning working? And I was reading some pieces of research that sometimes would present active learning as being very effective, and other times it was not as effective. I was trying to understand, why is that? And I'm looking at now John Marshall, who's a self-determination theory researcher, so you're going to hear more about it tomorrow. I'm also, I would like to call it, raised in the sort of the theory of self-determination theory. So I was coming in with this background, looking at autonomy supportive environments. And when I was reading about active learning practices that worked, to me it sounded like self-determination theory. It sounded like when those practices worked, they were done well. I talked to Ed Deasy a few years back and was talking to him about the project that we're doing, and that was his question. And I was talking about these active learning techniques and practices that we were folding into impact, and he looked at me, and if you know Ed Deasy, that will make sense. He looked at me and he said, "But are you doing it well?" And that's about all he said. Rich Ryan would have said so much more about these, but Ed Deasy is a very man of few words, I said, but it's very powerful what he said. So I thought, yes. So doing well was the idea of active learning strategies, when done well, are things that support autonomy, autonomy of the students and also autonomy of the faculty. So this is how I started writing the grant. So this idea about STEAM. That's how it came about. So that's sort of my perspective that I want to give. And I guess from a perspective of writing a grant and executing a grant, I think it's the same as sort of selecting your PhD thesis. When you select it, you have to love what you're doing, because there's lots of days when you're writing or trying to get it, or working on the budget, making sure that things work, and it's not always fun, right? I remember when I received the grant, and some of you may feel this way, I think it was actually said at our first gathering in Washington, D.C., they said, "Hey, you got the grant, yay!" Oh, you got the grant. Oh, there's sort of this like, okay, what do I do now? So there's still a lot of work to do, so much work to do. And I have mentioned that many times. You go through the process and you try as best you can to really do the kinds of things that you said you were going to do, and then you need to do some more. So we're trying to look for the next grant. So, but anyway, that was my perspective. So do you want to have, no?
I'd be happy to go last as the project
So you want to delegate back. Okay, so I'll
We'll delegate. Hi.
delegate.
I'm Emily Bonham. I'm a researcher working on the grant. When Jenny asked me to speak in the panel, I was trying to think of how, what can I bring, and also how can I condense everything that we've done in this grant into just a few minutes. But there was a few pieces, and one of them actually kind of plays right into what Chantal was talking about. So in my role in the center, I work on the impact program in a number of different ways. I work on the grant, but I also work in the program. So I work with faculty in the intervention, which is impact, which is essentially a faculty development semester-long program. And one of the things that Chantal was talking about is, when do things work well and when do they not? And this is one of the challenges that we've had when we've been trying to see whether impact works, is because no two interventions, no two impact courses look the same. They are all completely different. And that is a challenge, but it's also why the program works. Because we give faculty the autonomy to really create their transformations that work best for their own teaching styles, and to create autonomy and competence relatedness for their students in many different ways. So one faculty member might do it by allowing students to choose the topic of their final project. Another faculty member might do it by giving mastery quizzes where students can take this quiz over and over until that they've reached that competency. So it looks totally different, which is great, but it's also a challenge in trying to figure out what is working. So STEAM has really allowed us to do this both on the individual course level, so we're able to look at what are these individual interventions in each course, and now we're trying to build a larger model looking at all of these together. So the common thread is really our theoretical framework. So are these interventions increasing students' perceptions of the learning climate, and in turn, is that improving their performance? The other piece I wanted to touch on was, well, two other pieces. One piece I want to touch on is that STEAM has also allowed us to have more control. So one challenge of assessing impact that we've run into is that faculty come into this program, which is essentially, again, a faculty development program, and they want to make changes right away. They want to just dive in and make changes the semester they're going through, which doesn't really allow us to have any sort of baseline or control. So in turning it into a more research project, we've been able to have more quasi-experimental designs where we do different methodologies, some pre-post, some the semester of, where some sections are transformed and others are not. But it allows us to do a better comparison of what is this intervention really accomplishing. And then the last piece I was going to mention was that this idea that, oh, and I lost it. Sorry, I'm running on 4 hours of sleep today.
Oh, it's over there. Okay,
Yes.
that's the idea. There you go.
Yeah, so the last piece I was going to mention was that it's really an opportunity for us to go beyond, and this actually kind of goes back to my colleague Dan's question, but it kind of lets us go beyond measuring student performance in just grades and get down to the level of student learning. So one task we ask faculty to do is to map some of their assessments back to their learning outcomes. So instead of looking at the course overall grade, we are able to look at the individual learning outcome level. And you can say, okay, students are performing really well on learning outcomes 1 and 3, but learning outcome 2, it seems to be missing, and how can we help students improve that? So that's been a process, and it's been a challenge, but it's also been a really exciting way to look at student data that gives us this opportunity.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vivi Wang. I'm the graduate research assistant for the STEAM project. And here I'm going to talk about what I learned from the STEAM project as a graduate student. And I'm from China. Now I'm a PhD candidate in educational psychology at Purdue. And my research focuses on college students' motivation and learning in classrooms. And Chantal is my advisor. And in the STEAM project, my main role is to assist Jenny, our project manager. So I do whatever she asks me to do. Well, of course, at the beginning of the project, I do some kind of trivial things like collecting consent forms from students and scanning all of the consent forms and responding to students' emails. Well, this takes a certain amount of time when we are talking about thousands of students and hundreds of emails during the survey week. Well, as the project proceeds, I spend more time on data management and data analysis. For example, one of my routine jobs every semester is to provide our STEAM faculty with the instructor reports, which include the descriptive statistics of their student perception survey. Well, we usually send those reports out at the end of the semester or at the beginning of next semester. Well, this can help our STEAM faculty get immediate feedback on their courses because we have external evaluator, but it takes several months for them to compile all of the data. And with more data coming in, the focus of my work shifts from administrative jobs to research. Well, here I want to thank you, Chantal and Jenny, because they are very generous in sharing the data with me. I major in educational psychology, so it's very natural for me to connect my knowledge and my skill with the STEAM work I'm doing. And for example, I learned item response theory from a course. And I feel, okay, we can really use this advanced testing theory to analyze our STEAM data. We have knowledge exams, and this method is very helpful and it's very powerful to analyze this kind of data. So I talked to Jenny and I talked to Chantal to express this research idea. And they will evaluate whether this idea overlaps with others or not. If not, I can start to work on it. And I also tell them like which data set I was gonna use. And I did conduct that study, and actually I have a poster in the evening about that study. So if you want to know how to use item response theory to analyze your data, I'm very happy to sharing my experience and my findings with you. And another thing I want to recognize is the wonderful mentorship I received from Jenny and Chantal. And they included me as a colleague, although I'm a student, but they invite me to all the STEAM meetings and make me feel I was part of the team. I really appreciate that. And yeah, and in the future, like, I want to be a faculty member. Well, working for this grant prepared me for my future career, especially for the grant seeking and the grant running process. And in the future, I hope I will mentor my students just as Chantal and Jenny guided me. And last thing, I really feel I personally benefit a lot from the research work I'm doing for the STEAM project. And I'm very lucky to work with these great people on this great project. Yeah.
Well, I especially wanted, and thanks to Chantal, Emily, and Vivi, the four of us are up here because while Chantal got the ball rolling, we didn't see her for about a month. And you referenced this yesterday. I thought it was funny because I've been thinking about this too. In writing the grant, we just didn't see her for a while. And she came back, and a few months later we heard we had been one of the recipients of the grant. And so after that, the three of us plus Chantal have been in the mix with this project from the beginning, and it's been exciting to see. Like Chantal said, we're in our 5th year no-cost extension. We'll be done at the end of September of this year. And one of the things that I think that I would say that I've learned from the project management standpoint, I too have my PhD in Ed Psych, and Chantal was my advisor too. And we think the world of her and appreciate how much she's been able to let all of us be involved in this. But it's not just the four of us here on stage or our STEAM team of all the people, like Nastasha's here, and Stephanie, and Clarence was working with us, and Ben is here, but it's all the people who work in the Center for Instructional Excellence, the 25 faculty, and the 25 or so, actually it's probably more than 25 faculty, and the courses we've been working with, and the thousands and thousands of students who've taken our survey. We can't say enough, because without that, we wouldn't have what we need to conduct the research that we've been able to do. But coming from it as the project manager, I'm looking at these round tables, and I think about all the plates that we've been spinning, and all the different things. Yeah, I hear David laugh. I speak in analogies sometimes, and so I'm thinking of all the spinning plates you have to keep going when you're a project manager, and knowing how many more minutes are left in the presentation, and where's the lunch, and oh yeah, Deb has lunch. I don't have to think about that. But along with managing, recruiting faculty, collecting data, making sure everything is getting analyzed, where's our travel, and how is that $3.84 going to be contractually explained to the Department of Education? Because we don't have a receipt. Any other people here with a grant where they've had to explain a really small amount of money? But eventually we found it, and I learned that I love budgets. But spinning all these plates has been amazing to see this whole project come to fruition. But then now it's our turn to kind of take these plates and, if you will, frisbees. You know, we need to get this information out. We need to take all the things that we've learned, we've done, and be able to share this. And that's why we're excited that you're here today, and to carry this forward to all kinds of, to your campus, to people you talk with, so that this work goes forward. It's one of the reasons why we want to involve grad students, and Hyunjin is our postdoc, and we've got lots of people involved, and this will go forward from here at Purdue and from the STEAM grant. We're going to send this information and this idea of self-determination theory grounded active learning out to as many places as we can. Chantal has spoken about impact in a number of different international settings, and we're just excited to see this process grow and kind of take flight. Yeah.
Not in the tree.
Not yet. Yeah, we're not hitting the tree. We are not putting this plane in a tree. We're Purdue. It's a rocket ship. Thank you. All right, and one of the things we wanted to do, Nastasha. Oh, Karen, you got a mic too. Okay, great. We wanted to invite our fellow First in the World grant winners if they would like to say something about their process, and then we'll open it up for a few questions before our next panel. We've got somebody, yeah. Karen, turn to your right. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll get to you. Yeah. Do we have a mic on for him? I don't know. No. No.
Maybe. Yes, we are on.
On?
Are you on?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
No.
Didn't think it's quite, okay. Good morning. Okay, so I'm Ira Walker from Hampton University, and we are an HBCU located in southeastern corner of Virginia. HBCU stands for Historically Black College and University. Our university is relatively small. We have at the most 5,000 undergraduate students there. And so 4 years, well, in 2014, we won the grant from the Department of Education. And I must say that for me personally, it's been a very, very rewarding, transformative experience for me. At the same time, I must say that it was one of the most work-intensive things I've ever done too. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, when we were working on this proposal, first of all, it was like certainly a group effort. I did not singularly write the proposal, but we had a team of like maybe 7 people who were working jointly on this proposal. And like I said, it was very, very work intensive. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, it was during June, after the semester was over, and we worked daily, literally morning, noon, and night. I know that sounds like a cliche, but we really worked morning, noon, and morning, day, and night. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, on one particular occasion, after having gone in early in the morning to work with the team, and say like 10 o'clock at night. 10 o'clock at night, I'm physically exhausted, mentally exhausted, and so the person who was our team leader said, okay, let's stop now. And I'm saying, thank God, we can go home and whatnot. Then she said, let's take a 30-minute break and then come back. And so there were some times when we stayed, even worked on the weekends, and one particular time, we stayed up till like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning. The campus guards had to kick us out off campus. So, but all in all, it was well worth it. And so, like I said, there's been a lot of rewards that have come from this endeavor. I'll talk more about what we did later on. I'm giving a talk later on today. But basically what we did was we looked at 2 interventions, the flipped classroom and also project-based learning. And the reason we did that was because we recognized that there was a high attrition rate amongst our students. A lot of students were coming in as science majors, engineering majors, whatever, math majors, but then were leaving those majors to go into other disciplines. And so we realized that the crux of the matter was, or the problem was, with mathematics. So mathematics was sort of the focus of our work we were doing. And so what we did was we used those interventions, the flipped classroom and project-based learning. We infused those into one of our math classes, and to collect data and see if, by using those interventions, if that made a difference in the outcome of the students. So I don't want to steal my own thunder. I'll talk about later on what we actually did, but sort of hold you in suspense. But I think all things considered, it was a very positive experience. Like I said, it was a lot of work, but I think we got some good information, some good data from this work. And like I said, I'll talk more about what we did later.
Great, thank you. Nastasha, you're over on that side of the room with our other, we would go to these meetings and they would abbreviate first in the world as FITWA. We were never really sure FITWA was going to catch on, so. But
we just call it FITW.
yeah.
So we go for the acronym. I'm Laura Sullivan Green from San Jose State. This First in the World project, I'm an associate professor, so I do this on overload. You can imagine how many hours I work in a week. Our grant is 3 campuses. So a lot of what I do is talking to our campus leads on our other 2 campuses and our faculty learning community coordinators, and trying to juggle all of the different pieces, like you said, many plates in the air. We are also doing flipped classroom in gateway STEM courses. So we are really trying to focus on that DFW rate for these gateway courses: calculus, physics, discrete math, computer science, circuits, statics. And kind of what we are looking at, you mentioned, trying not to focus on grades. well, obviously, we're looking at that. It's a very easy way to justify, are we doing something good? But instead of looking backwards at learning outcomes in the course, we are looking to see if students do better in subsequent courses. So we try to make sure that is Calculus 1 preparing them for Calculus 2. Our campus had an experience in our circuits class where they did flipped classroom, and in that circuits class, it was amazing improvement in the grades. But then the students who did the flipped classroom were bombing their classes that came after circuits. So it looked really good on paper, and the students really failed after. So we're really making sure, are these things working for the students to progress? We can't really say that yet. As you also mentioned, faculty are doing their own thing in their own classroom and giving them the ability to make it work for them. But we're trying not to look at that lower level. We are really focusing our efforts and our evaluation on calculus. We're doing a very deep calculus study, which we will talk about in detail tomorrow. But the number one thing that we have learned from that so far, we're in our year 4, so we haven't got our no-cost extension. But I can say that I'm really happy to hear that the 2014 grantees all got extensions, because I got a lot of money to spend. But we learned that we can, with proper intervention, prevent the slump from faculty changing their pedagogy. So when they're learning how to do flipped classroom, if we make sure that they have good support, the students, we're not doing any harm to them by that transition. And that is the number one thing right now that we are very proud of, because we showed that we can make the faculty change over to this, and the students aren't harmed even for a short amount of time. So we're still working out some of those pieces, but yeah, lots of fun.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have Natalia Sucre, who's from the College of New Rochelle, and I just saw Michael come on back in, which is great timing because their intervention involved the libraries, which we were excited to hear about.
Right. Hi. I actually was not involved in getting the grant. I was a beneficiary of the grant myself. I was hired as a Learning Commons librarian for the grant, and my dean of the library is not here today, was not able to be here. So, but what I from speaking with her and from experiencing the grant, a lot of what's been said resonates, especially a few things that stick out. First, the having to implement the grant, sort of the surprise of getting the grant. But the College of New Rochelle, this grant was for the School of New Resources, which, as I'll be telling you more in a moment, is a adult education liberal arts BA program. So it was targeted for adult working students. It's a small program, but it's across initially six and then 5 campuses in New York City, whereas the College of New Rochelle is in the College of New Rochelle. So part of the implementation, what was difficult was getting all the campuses on board, and also getting buy-in from the school, because the grant happened so quickly that was where there was a lot of effort put. But as I'll be saying shortly, there were a great many rewards in the close work with the students from this.
Great, thanks. I think we have a few more minutes for questions if you'd like to ask us or any of our other First in the World grantees. And I see a hand in the back. Karen, you're heading that way? Okay, Nastasia got there first. All right. 2 points for
Thank you.
Gryffindor.
Hi, I'm Kim DeBucco from UC Riverside. I'd like to ask the team from Purdue, first of all, but the others projects might like to comment. Could you say a little bit more about recruiting faculty and your strategies for recruiting faculty? Obviously, you're going to build off existing networks, but I'd like to know more about rewards and incentives as well. Thanks.
Well, for us, we were very fortunate to have already impact in place. Our course transformation program, which stands for Instruction Matters, Purdue Academic Course Transformation, which is the intervention for the grant, was already in place. So we started this in 2014, so we had been about 3 years in. So that was our first pass. We went and looked at the faculty that were in STEM, that were already in impact, and started there. So I'm pointing at Ben Wiles was right around 2014 was the implementation. So when we received the grant, the calculus, so we also focus on calculus in a large revamp. So I'm going to focus on Calculus 1, Calculus 2 a little bit today. Your presentation is tomorrow, I think, with Yume over there. They'll focus on 16010. So that was just very fortunate, right? So we started there. And then we continued to recruit strategically, but that really helped us with our first wave of recruitment. And we have some courses, one in chemistry particularly, that just started data collection, I think, last year. Or we're finishing this semester is our last semester of data collection. Well, we kind of extended that, so. Any others want to talk about their recruitment process?
So just to comment on that, money works really well in most cases, but it is not the end-all be-all. We came to find out on some of our campuses, our partner campuses, that bribery was used, and those faculty that were bribed to come on board as part of the core faculty were not very dedicated, and most of them are actually off of the grant now. They went for a semester, maybe 2, and then they disappeared. So motivating them through justification. We rolled all of our classes in year by year, and showing them what happened early on really got our faculty to buy into it, to the point that now we actually have our mechanics courses at San Jose State, so statics, mechanics of materials, and dynamics. They are actually working as partners to make sure that the 3 sequence classes are working together. They use the same platform for an online book. They use the same series of book. They use the same videos as review for the subsequent courses, and they're working really well with that. So really it was evidence-based, showing them it works, showing them it's not that hard to do it, and they don't have to make videos. That was the number one.
I want to kind of add to this. So I wrote the grant, and I didn't have a team. It was me and a couple of my student assistants in a room, like for a month, same as yours, right? Like pretty much writing and like reviewing it. So we have 23 campuses, right? Yes. So we picked LA first because the Dean of Engineering used to be the Associate Dean at San Jose State. And I could call her on the phone and say, hey, do you want to be on this grant with us? And that's how we picked her. We picked Cal Poly because our provost at the time had been dean at Cal Poly and knew connections there. So that's how we got those campuses. And then, Laura's right, then we don't know how they recruited, but the deans on those campuses were responsible for recruiting people, and we picked DFW classes. So I looked at San Jose State's, if you're in STEM, you know calculus has like been historically a high DFW class, and most places around the world, around the country at least. So we looked at the DFWs for freshman, sophomore classes, and then I came up with a list and said, here's the ones we're going to work on, find someone to do it, and as Laura said afterwards, like a year or 2 after we got the grant, we found out that some people weren't involved in doing it. So we have had different people come on the grant. We didn't even have someone at San Jose State identified for statics in Laura's own department until after we got the grant, and because no one would volunteer to work on it. And I put it in and left it out, and no one noticed, I guess, that I didn't have anyone from San Jose State working on statics. It was very challenging, and I will say my funny comment is that I cut the last draft when I was on vacation in Hawaii, sitting at the pool, in the shade, and that was my final cut. because it was like due like 2 days later, and I had to do the last cut because I had to wait from the partners. So I think the big issue is now we're recruiting additional faculty. We've been very lucky because part of our grant is to train additional faculty on all 3 campuses, and we've been very lucky in having additional faculty sign up, and we pay them $250 a day. So that seems to be the magic number on a campus to get a STEM faculty to show up for a day. Well, I'm serious. For a day workshop, that if you pay them $250, they'll come. I don't know why that's the magic number, but seems to be the magic. Anything less, they will not show up. Particularly engineering faculty will not show up. So I don't know if that'll help you. We were very happy to get it. 17 got the second year out of 300 and something or whatever applied. So we were very happy to get it. No.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in and kind of play off with what some of the other ones were saying, which is this kind of actually goes back to the conversation about grades. And for faculty, the money is essentially the grades, and it's not on. Okay, I'm just not quite high enough. Okay, sorry. So in terms of the faculty, the motivation, as she was saying, the money is great, and it's really great to get people in the door, but it doesn't really sustain the transformation. It doesn't really get them invested in the program. And it's the same sort of things we talk about with faculty in terms of motivating their students, that we want to motivate our faculty. And by giving them autonomy in terms of what kind of things they're doing, and by getting them involved in the project and getting them to see the relevance to their own careers, and so getting them involved. I know a number of ours have done scholarship, which you'll see at the poster session, and talking about it. So making it relevant and helpful to them, and making them kind of partners in the research process, and not just sort of like paying them for their assistance, because as we know from motivation, that's actually demotivating. So, those are kind of a few things I would just add to that.
We have time for one more question, I think.
So,
one more question.
Yeah, I just had a question, and it might be too soon, but about persistence of change. So I think it connects to George's comment about how hard it is to move the needle, and I think it's got to do with the cultural aspects of what we're doing and people's long experience. So I know I heard Carl Wyman talk about an NSF-funded project that he worked on where everyone made all these wonderful changes over the 5-year period of the grant, and then he went back and visited the institution 3 years after the grant was done, and 80% of the people had gone back to doing things the way they had done it prior to the grant. So I wonder if you're looking at that, and if you have any ideas from any of the groups of how to make sure that these changes don't go away just because individuals sometimes feel it's easier to go back to what they used to do.
I'll start off really quick. One of the things that we hope through autonomy supportive faculty training and faculty support that way, we want them to be endorsing the change that they're making. And very frequently, they find that what they're doing is easier than what they used to do, and very possibly even more effective. And so those things, we hope over the long term will be motivating. Nastasia Johnson, who's on our libraries faculty, and I are working on a side project study because we noticed that in over a 4 or 5 year period, not only do faculty, maybe they go back to what they were doing, they also move or they get promoted. And so we had some projects start, or some classes start in our study, and we have a faculty member now who is now a beloved faculty member at Kennesaw State University. Well, there went that. So, and how do those things get sustained even when the faculty member leaves? And so we've seen some variability in that as well. But I think that, and I'll give the mic to Chantal, but I think that that's something we hope as we're instilling this, that we want them to be endorsing the change that they're making and seeing that it's positive. If they have that volition, that sense of choicefulness about what they're changing in their classroom, that'll carry forward with them. Do you want to add to that?
I think that's good. I'll talk about that actually later after lunch in my
Great.
presentations. I talk about culture change. So.
Great. Laura, did you want to add something to that? Is there a mic by that end? No, Nastasha's coming. I know you're... Okay. Oh, you don't have a mic. Okay. I'll meet you halfway.
Oh my God, my mind just totally went blank.
We were talking about sustainability of the transformation.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, mind went blank. Sorry, thinking about my broken foot as opposed to anything else. One of the things that we have focused on in our learning communities is starting them young and making this part of the retention, tenure, and promotion process, providing resources for that, providing rubrics for senior faculty to evaluate flipped classrooms, and making sure that we start them there so that it becomes part of the culture early on, and making that a valuable thing for the faculty to do. And we rely a lot on lecturers, particularly in these lower division courses. Our tenure track faculty tend to do the more upper division courses. So getting lecturers who are on campus for a while, they are great people to bring into the fold. And then they tend to train the newer probationary faculty, or the probationary faculty as well as the adjunct faculty, to come on board with this. So it's kind of planting that seed with whoever takes care of that course and making it a valuable part of their evaluation process. So we provided those rubrics, and we have this all on our website that anybody who's doing this can do.
I think we're going to wrap up so we can start out with the next session. But
Yeah, thank you so much for your thoughts. It's great.